but is that a problem for some people? Would that deter some people that might vote at Ford Field and not at the DIA? I mean, we all know the DIA famously has some inclusivity issues with city residents, right?
Right, right. And in the city of Detroit, famously has had its fights with its residents about buildings and landmarks and things like that. That's definitely an issue when it comes to that when you bring it home. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's have some fun. Baseball just did something. Keith is a baseball. I guess you are more of a baseball fan than I am. Going back to when we were children. No, I'll say you may not watch it now because you dove your life into the law and the Tigers suck. Sorry, folks. But Keith is, I guess, more of a baseball head. They just announced that they are moving the All-Star game from Atlanta to somewhere else. In light of the voting law being passed. Do you see other businesses, other sports doing that to Georgia until they fix this, until they get this change, or no? The more recent example I've seen is the North Carolina when they passed their HB1 bill, famously known as the bathroom bill, where you had to go use the facilities of the gender you were, I guess, born with on your birth certificate. That's a very oversimplified way of recruiting what they were saying. And you had musicians, you had sporting events, you had a lot of people say, hey, if you do not do something with this bill, we're out, we're gone. I don't know if the bill got changed. I have to look at that and stuff. But with baseball pulling out, do you see other sports entities pulling out of Georgia and of Atlanta in lieu of this bill?
Well, this is where you come down to and you get into the bigger argument of, and nothing makes me cringe more than the phrase cancel culture, but because it's called capitalism, but it's just called capitalism. I'm sorry, and I don't buy your things. It's the market. Like right. I used to economic. I don't know. Anyways, but we saw this in North Carolina with the bathroom bill. We've seen this with Arizona a little bit with the driving ID laws, racial profiling of Hispanics in Arizona. Georgia is interesting because the MLB All-Star game was there. The Masters is in Atlanta. Is not in Georgia. NASCAR, of course, is big in Georgia. These are typically, more Caucasian-based sports. Masters famously has racial and gender issues.
And the Masters have the cachet and the money to give people the middle finger and say, we don't care. They only How many female members do they have? Like the famous one is Condoleezza Rice, and that's because she was the Secretary of State. She had to be the Secretary of State to get. Come on, Condi. I guess you.
And the president of Stanford,
and the president of Stanford, and part of the college playoff commission. Right, she had to be all these things.
World traveler. But it is also interesting, in Georgia you have Delta Airlines is headquartered in Atlanta.
Yep.
Coke is headlining in Atlanta, right? Yep. And these are gigantic companies, right?
Yep.
Who, and the idea of these, all these giant corporations doing, some people think it's empty and it's shallow and they talk a game and then they forget about it or whatever. Long term, they have to think about their bottom lines, right? Like all of this, the corporations are having the same. The corporations are under the same pressures as the Republican legislatures that are passing these laws, right? The voter laws like this one, the intent is, the writing is on the wall, expanding access to voting in some states, and not all, which is where it gets interesting on mail-in voting, is this is not universal in all states. This is not talked about in Utah and in Florida. Expanding access to voting actually helps Republicans. But in a lot of states, the theory is, for demographic reasons, it helps Democrats. So the states in Georgia, Texas is doing the same thing. As Texas got closer and Houston's flipping, and Beto O'Rourke got close. It's restricting access to voting. Arizona doing the same thing. The demographics, of how people will vote right now in the next 10, 20, 30 years, the writing's on the wall. If the Republican Party maintains its core of straight white men, there's a shrinking percentage of the population. So, the theory is, either the writing's on the wall that's going forward, so therefore they're trying to maintain the power as long as they can. The corporations have the similar logic. They have to look at those demographics too. They have the same demographic picture. They have to market going forward. Coke is who Coke is today because they were genius. The fact they got the exclusive contract during war to give Coke to American soldiers. The soldiers came back.
The drink, everybody, the drink. He keeps saying Coke, and we haven't specified the drink, not the Pablo Escobar variety. The drink, Coca-Cola, the drink with the red label. Continue, sir.
So Coca-Cola, of course, got the exclusive contract to give its beverages to American soldiers. The soldiers came home, drank Coke, gave their kids Coke, right? McDonald's and all this stuff. They have to think long term about, okay, what am I gonna drink? What are the kids gonna drink? What are teenagers gonna drink? They have to think long term about where the demographic is. A short term hit to, whatever, the NASCAR, right? Like, look at NASCAR last year with the Confederate flag. That shocked a lot of people.
Yes, it did.
NASCAR, there's no more Southern white sport than NASCAR, right? I mean, all aside. But NASCAR was right out in front going, no Confederate flag. Like, whoa. But long term, if the NASCAR wants to grow its fan base, do they want to be the home of the Confederate flag flies around? Or the other, right? And baseball's not, baseball famously has its problems with African American players too. Like, baseball is the African American player number in baseball is extremely low.
Right.
The Hispanic and Latin American players are everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know the percentages, but I think it was close to kind of a tie-ish.
Mm-hmm.
But the black player numbers are astronomically low, right?
Yeah.
So
right now it's Tim Anderson. Oh God, please don't put a gun in my hand and answer another black superstar. My mind went to Torrey Hunter, and Torrey Hunter's been retired for
but it's like not much better in hockey, right? Where it's like, okay, you can name PK Subban and
who and who else, right?
Just like naming individuals, right? Which is never a good thing.
Right.
Like naming, back in the day, naming black quarterbacks or whoever it was, you start naming individuals, you're already admitting that your numbers are terrifyingly low, right?
You bring up a point regarding corporations and what they have to look at, and I think that spawns definitely a deeper conversation of maybe we as society need to stop going to corporations, stock market symbols for morality, right? Because Coca-Cola got in trouble with this Be Less White campaign. Like, that's one of those things where Coca-Cola it was Coca-Cola, where they came out with this Be Less White video, and I watched the video and I laughed at the video because I'm like, yo, one thing white people hate being told to do is be less white. Like, they can't stand that. First off, white people don't like to be told stuff what to do. We seen it with the mask. Y'all go crazy. Okay. People could play golf and go buy watermelon seeds. Y'all storm somebody's house. Okay. Coca-Cola got in trouble for that. The NFL notoriously has gotten in trouble because they've tried to be the morality police, right? When their player base, most of them are good dudes, but when you have the Greg Hardys who beat up his girlfriend and threw her on a bed of guns, you had Josh Brown, the punter for the New York Giants, who was a domestically violent, abusing his wife, I think for decades, right? You have guys like Leonard Little who drunkenly killed someone's mother and then came back and played the next week. But yet we go to these organizations like the NFL who had their Black Lives Matter, we're listening now, we care, blah, 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 when it was a new hotness, right? Like you mentioned NASCAR with the Confederate flag situation. And other states had started to take down, like Mississippi had started to take down its Confederate flag and try to change its flag. They had one flag idea that had like, it looked like a cotton on it. And I'm like, yo, Mississippi, come on, man.
It was like that worse.
I'm like, yo,
they got worse.
This is one of those times where you gotta have diversity in the meeting, right? Because you can't take down a Confederate flag, Mississippi, and then someone thinks it's a good idea to put a cotton back up there. Like, no, that's not what we're trying to do, Mississippi. I think they were trying to put their flower, magnolia flower, whatever their state flower is, but it looked like a cotton. So I'm like, can you just put something up that's not that, right? But it's tough when you're Mississippi and your history is slavery. So like, you don't really have too much to go on, but cotton and Confederate stuff. So I guess my overall question to I guess wrap this all up and bring this all together is, when it comes to things like, because I got one more. When it comes to things like this, do we make the mistake as society going to these corporations when in regards to, racism, prejudice, sexism, anti-Semitics, and now voting suppression, and we look to them and say, hey, Amazon, you go out and you be the leader. And we only know Amazon because we know Jeff Bezos. No one can tell me the owner of Coca-Cola off the top of their head. Stop, you can't, right? No one can tell me the owner of Pepsi off the top of their head. Maybe someone can because they're in an economics class and they say that stuff. But for us to go to these corporations and say, hey, be our morality, is that a mistake that we're making with stuff like this?
It probably is a mistake, but that's the dynamic of power in America, right? I mean, corporations now have, the dark money politics and unlimited contributions of corporations to politicians, and their interest group, their special interest groups, Americans for a cleaner environment, and it's like some oil company conglomerate political pack, right? Mm-hmm. Just like massive, and Chick-fil-A famously being socially conservative and donating to social conservative causes, and Hobby Lobby, and fighting against Obamacare, and the
Wendy's with their farming and issues in South America.
And we've legally in this country, we've allowed corporations to have such outsized, political power, but in terms of their cash donations, plus from the executives, the donations from the executives themselves, their lobbying efforts on writing the laws, on corporations have speech rights, and those corporations speak. Corporations can have religious views, the holding the Hobby Lobby, or the ministerial exception to the First Amendment and all this stuff, where corporations have all these rights and speech rights, and corporate payments are paying money is speech. We've created a system where and corporate profits are such a gigantic part of our economy that's so unequal at this point, that it's just when your power is so limited and someone else is vast, you look to Iron Man to save you, right? Kind of the same concept, right? Just Iron Man is Bill Gates and Coca-Cola instead of Jeff Bezos spending $200 billion to be Iron Man, which I'm sorry, $100 billion in Iron Man, you're lazy. End world hunger or be Iron Man. Pick
one of the two, but pick one.
I don't know what you're doing. What are you going to be like? I don't understand. But you create that dynamic, right? I mean, if once that person has outsized power and influence, you look to them to do the thing, and that's kind of the reality. Stuff changes in America when the money says it changes, right? Which, whether you call that capitalism or cancel culture, is up to you. But
well, I'm definitely gonna have a little sneak peek for people. A lot of stuff coming out of the pipe. I'm definitely gonna have a capitalism conversation about capitalism in general, and if capitalism killed Black progress. But leading into, I guess, the final question of the final part of the show, because we are running out of time. We've been talking a long time. What, if anything, we can do to keep this from happening forward, right? Because it's a bill. Hasn't been signed into law officially. Is there like lawsuits pending on it? So it is law. Okay.
It will get challenged. The progressive voting rights groups are challenging it.
But as of sitting today, it is law. Okay. What can we do? Those who are those who have the suppressed, or who have been suppressed, those who don't want to see this happen again. What is the best thing we can do moving forward to have this change? And I know what the answer is, and I have an answer to your answer, but go ahead. What can we do to solve this?
Well, there's the one word answer that you expect me to say is to vote.
That is
all the way down the ballot, and vote all the way down the ballot, right? The second part of that is look up Stacey Abrams' organization and do what she tells you to do. Look, Georgia is Georgia today because, this law is in reaction to how, it turning blue on the presidential level only, and on the Senate in 2020, after she just fell short in 2018. This is 10 to 15 years of work by Stacey Abrams and her organization. This did not happen overnight. There's a reason Georgia is where it is and Florida is not, right?
Right.
Florida is uber close, but just a little red always, right? For similar reasons.
Right.
Amendment 4 and disenfranchising felons and what's turned into a poll tax and has been upheld in courts and all this stuff. But Stacey Abrams has worked on these issues for over a decade. And registered voters, got voters out to vote, has educated them, has turned the script. It's groundwork. It's being involved on a local level, voting for school boards, voting for state reps, voting for mayors. You saw that, all this stuff happened on the ground. Harris County, Texas, which is Houston, has a Democrat judge. I'm blanking on her name at the moment, which is terrible because she's is an awesome warrior on these issues. Houston had drop boxes and absentee voting and mail-in voting and mobile voting centers because of one election, or basically what is the equivalent of a county executive in Texas, right? In Harris County, which is where Houston is. That one person was probably responsible for 500,000 votes.
Right.
And adding 500,000 votes to the rolls in Houston is expanding access. You have to vote for these small voices here. You have to vote for your state. State legislatures pass these laws. You don't vote for your state legislature in your legislature in your midterm, you're stuck with what they decide to do on voting rights. You're stuck with, you want, and it comes down to, I have a good friend and he just told me yesterday, he says, I'm economically probably a Republican. Culturally, no cultural conservatism or anything, but economically probably Republican, hates far left policies on economic issues. But he's from a very, grow up in a very rural, small town where everybody who's white and everybody's a Republican. I will probably never vote for a Republican ever again because at the end of the day, they want to decide who can vote and who cannot.
Right.
And no matter what someone's issue is on economic issues at this point, either you believe in voting, you believe in everyone's access to vote and respect for everyone, or you don't. It's either about power, maintaining one group's power, or expanding that access to everyone. And at the end of the day, whether power of our elected and unelected branches of government is legitimate, right? So if you put, your orange short-term, I want a tax cut ahead of, well, I want to reduce, maybe I'm going to forget my ID one day and not going to be able to vote. And my neighbor won't be able to vote. because I want a tax cut right now. That's what you have to make.
Well,
that's just reality. And in some states, it's not like that. Again, like in Utah, heavily Republican state, universal mail-in voting works perfectly well.
Right.
In other states, it's come down to one demographic trying to maintain power. Either okay with kind of harboring that, or you're not, right? So
you nailed the dismount with that. You crushed it at the end. My you were correct what I was going to say with my response to that, but you definitely went more in depth, which is great, because I am a person at my age where you either have to get up and do something, right, or you just kind of, whatever happens, you just kind of, I guess, roll with it, I guess, or deal with it, or you don't, or you get up and you fight, you try to make the change. And for situations like this, we're asking people, because what you're asking for on the lower levels of government, you're asking them to do something that and this is where maybe you are more optimistic than I am, or maybe the optimism is starting to rub off on me. We're asking people to go out and do something they haven't been able to do in decades, and that's be smarter about their local government. Go out there and be smarter about their local officials, about who their sheriff is, about who their this is, and who that is.
And their local prosecutors.
Right, exactly. Because
you're gonna call, if you're gonna call about a partisan observer intimidating voters on election day, or a poll worker saying, "Hey, you don't have an ID, you can't vote." In Michigan, that's legal; you're allowed to vote. You gotta call your sheriff and be like, "Hey, what's going on?" A lot of places that sheriff's not going to show up, depending on whose side you're with, right?
Right.
So all that matters. I did want to say, you go this back in earlier, but two resources for people. Stacey Abrams' organization is called Fair Fight, fairfight.com. And another great resource is the Brennan Center for Justice.
Okay.
Out of, I believe it's NYU. But great resources. They're on voting rights, on gerrymandering, long-term studies, expanding ballot access.
I'll put those links in the description, everybody. So you can get all the information that you need. I'll put those links in the description. Thank you, Keith, for definitely throwing that in there so people can get more educated. At the end of the day, folks, we have the keys to our future. At the end of the day, whether you are left, whether you're right, whether you're a Republican or Democrat, progressive, Tea Party, Whig Party, this party, that party, your party, my party, House Party, wherever you're at, let's not take people's chances to voice their American and constitutional right to vote. Let's not disenfranchise another human being not more than what we have to, just at all in general. So with that being said, Keith Brown, thank you very much for being on today. It's been very enlightening, educational for me, and hopefully for the audience. This has been Ask a Black Dude. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.